We are so back. After racing through 6 months of Stray Kids history in just 5 episodes of Chan's Room, we're finally settling into a familiar rhythm. Episode 58 marks the return to weekly episodes, a shift that feels right on time, as we've been navigating the kids' Hop comeback and the holiday season, all of which has turned our time travel adventures on their heads a bit. It's not just that things have been wild in the here and now, though. After a year of rewatching Chan's Room together, we've fallen into a familiar cadence, coming back to each other week after week. Much the same as our 2019 stays would have, with just a little wiggle room in there for episodes that stretched a few weeks or maybe only had a few days in between. The overall effect has been one of walking alongside stays more or less at the same pace that they lived through events, but episodes 53 through 57 catapulted us forward at light speed. I think we're more than capable of commiserating with stays who are missing Chan over those long stretches, but speeding forward like this has effectively given us whiplash too. The District 9 Unlocked tour in the US was an absolute blur. We were thrown straight into the deep end with the onset of the pandemic. New albums and music have been releasing almost weekly for us in the rewatch timeline, and it doesn't leave a lot of time for reflection, especially for the emotional beats of what it was like to walk beside Stray Kids for the first half of 2020. We've had a disconnect, and maybe that more than anything is what ties us back to 2020 stays, because while our disconnection feels more like a mad blur, stays in 2020 were navigating their own forms of disconnection. There was a distance from Chan's Room, long weeks that stretched in between. Even the kind of connection they had with Stray Kids in the before times was altered, evolving into something new. And this was spilling out almost everywhere in real life too. COVID forced separation on people and tied cruel and deadly consequences to human connection. But life is full of paradoxes, and the biggest takeaway from the onset of COVID's global spread was this: even when we are on our own, we're alone together. It might not have been universal, and it certainly didn't last, but in early 2020, the world did by and large become a kinder, more understanding place for a brief moment in time. One where humanity started to realize how interconnected we all are and how much we rely on each other. Where is all this rambling taking us? Of all places, coming into June 2020, we're headed to the place where K-pop and Black Lives Matter overlap. Because as we come into the week of Chan's Room episode 58, George Floyd had just been murdered. A Black American killed on camera by a white police officer. The protests that erupted following this event couldn't help but be fueled by the emotional toil the past months had come with, but there was also still a lingering sense of unprecedented solidarity across the globe, which meant when the cry went up, the world itself joined in, and so did K-pop fans in their own unique way. Efforts to help promote Black Lives Matter were absolutely the top priority for a lot of people in social media spaces, regardless of what their normal focus was. But I don't want to paint a rosy picture of this moment in time, at least as we're focusing on the K-pop world. Because the reality is, when it came to these spaces, I cannot stress enough that these efforts were disorganized, fraught with controversy, and generally chaotic. Good things came out of it all, thankfully, but I don't want to give the impression that it was well coordinated or that fandoms were unified behind the efforts that took off, because they very much were not. While a lot of people had actual boots on the ground protesting in the streets across the world, K-pop fans, including stays, waged their own protests and expressed solidarity from behind keyboards too. Spamming hashtags meant to oppose Black Lives Matter with fan cam footage, crashing police tip lines designed to target Black individuals, and encouraging each other to keep Stray Kids-related tags quiet on Blackout Tuesday out of respect for the movement. Across the world, people were speaking up, including celebrities of all nationalities. Understandably, a lot of opinions and hot takes began to circulate about the possibility of Stray Kids adding their voices to the mix too. There are times when these topics have been addressed by members, but the most important thing to remember when considering these things is this: we have no idea what conversations are happening behind the scenes with any of this. We do not know what is allowed and what is not allowed. We only know what we know, which comes from observing the kids' actions and listening to their words. Because our kids show up with authenticity, it's not hard to see them for who they are, and by extension, to feel a sense of their beliefs. While the world was shifting, Stray Kids kept moving forward. It's a theme that's carrying them through this year more than anything, and this week brought us the first trailer for Go Live, along with a prequel highlight reel elaborating on the story that had been woven through all of their albums to date. If you want to dive more into the content that Stays enjoyed this week, grab the link for episode 58's time travel playlist from the notes below. It'll definitely be worth your time, especially because amidst all this, there's a really tender offering being shared with Chan releasing his Skiz record for I Hate to Admit, which he teased in the last episode of Chan's Room. This is a song that most of us know and love, considering it a treasured example of Chan's raw talent. But at the time, it was a huge departure for him. I Hate to Admit was a strikingly minimalistic and emotionally charged evolutionary step for Chan, which is kind of wild considering that even this early in his career, he was so well known for the incomprehensible layers to his music that injecting the illusion of simplicity into his work was perhaps one of the most shocking things he could do. The way this song is carried with reverence by Stays speaks volumes, because whether we hone in on the details deliberately or not, the emotion behind every piano key strike and the unguarded intimacy of every lyric translates universally. I Hate to Admit transcends simple meaning and evolves instead into something closer to the raw beauty of honest expression. While that sounds really advanced and artistic, that's also just how Chan rolls on a daily basis though, meaning that warmth and innate understanding is something he shares with Stays too anytime we're together. Which is why, you know what's coming, we'll be there to meet Channy this Sunday, January 12th at 11 p.m. KST, to rewatch episode 58 together. Because moments like this, where connection becomes tangible, remind us how rare and beautiful it is to share space and hearts with each other. So let's step back into that rhythm together. I'll see you then.